Hello, everyone. So, hi out there. My name is Martin Cserba. I'm digital strategist and evangelist with Diconium. I'm very happy to have you together with us today. I am sitting here in Stuttgart in our digital garage, which basically, if you look behind of me, it was a little old horse stable where I'm right now in. So that is the kind of a good place where the future can meet the past, and we just go go straight into our session today. So welcome to everyone. I'm just starting to share my screen. Hopefully everyone sees it. Because normally technology is beautiful, but sometimes it's not perfect, as we all know it. But we are here today for New Retail 2020. This session is about giving us a focus on the future of retail, but also deals with today. And I'm, like I said, I'm pretty much appreciating that you all join us for today, because spending your time for 1 hour with us within that thousands of hours of webinars, what we get offered, where we are in. So thank you very much for joining us, and let's have some fun and a good time together. There is one point I just want to emphasize, which brings us all here together on our webinar on new retail, and with the focus on frictionless convenience today. The common point, I think, why we are all here is curiosity. That is the point which brings us together, which is good, because curiosity fuels innovation, and we all here in that room need to see what is behind the curve, but also what can we do today. So I'm very, very happy today that I'm not alone, because I have two wonderful co-speakers together with me, and I have written here the little philosophy we have in our digital garage here, which is a kind of quote of Pippi Longstocking, which says, "We have never tried that before, so it will go for sure good." And I want to make something together with you. Bruno and Matthew, you introduce yourself, please, in a way you have never done before. Just try it, because it will for sure be good. So give us a little intro on yourself. I will just stop my screen. Happy to welcome Bruno Teuber from Commerce Tools, Chief Revenue Officer, and Matthew Woolsey, Global President at 66 North. So welcome. Give us the intro like you have never done it before. Bruno.
I think you're on mute, Bruno.
Bruno, we can't hear you.
Sorry, guys. Thanks, Martin, and thanks for challenging us to kind of introduce ourselves the way we have never done before. I tried to kind of like be very creative, but I only could come up with this on a short notice. So this is me, Bruno Teuber. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Commerce Tools. I love to be here, and I love to spend time over the next 58 minutes, hopefully convincing you why you should work with us and Diconium, and how you can hear great stories, how we can help you going forward. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Great, and my name is Matthew Woolsey. I'm the Global President of 66 North, which is an 95-year-old Icelandic outerwear company. I suppose I will just show you what I have at my desk, which is I have, and maybe this will tell you something about me. I have a sculpture of a puffin that the head can turn and look at you, and I have a Joseph Heller glass filled with water because it's one of the hottest days of the year where I'm sitting, so I need to stay hydrated.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Matthew, it is a pleasure to be with you. Let's get started. I will just continue. wakes up in the morning and does nothing else than thinking about frictionless convenience and making the life better and the shopping experience better for consumers. Afterwards, we will have final points. There is a kind of questions button on your screen. If there is any kind of questions you would like to ask us, just raise your questions in here. My colleague Teuber is in the background. He will collect the questions. If there is any kind of time at the end, we will try to answer your questions, or just get in touch with us. We are there for you. So welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. Let me give a kind of a quick overview about where we are with the study. So each and every year, when we look at new retail, the trends in retail and designing the future of retail, we start in January in New York at the NRF Retail's Big Show, which is a big gathering with a heavy technology focus on innovation on retail. So we go to New York and talk with many startups, with technology companies to get the information there. Then we start to discover the field, make safaris out there in different cities, a retail innovation week in New York to see some trends which coming out from the US, but also in Europe. We are walking around different cities, scouting things. We also visited Euroshop in Düsseldorf to see the European perspective on retail design. And then we have seen this year that there was a strong focus and a strong rise of sustainability, sustainable retail. So we made also discovery in Scandinavia, where we can learn a lot about sustainability and social impact, which is also ending in retail. And that was the journey, what we have done until March. And then it made a big boom, yeah. And then I was sitting together with my colleague Lisa, which you see here on the picture, where we have said, okay, shit, now we have a kind of global pandemic, we have a crisis, and we need to see what is the impact of this crisis on designing retail for the future. So we made the next round, the post-COVID round. What's the impact? How will the next normal look like? That's what we have done. At the end, with all that information, you see a beautiful picture of our digital garage with a lot of paper. So we tried to consolidate it, and then we ended up with a report. At the end, I think on the website as well, there is the link where you can download it. So just refer into that. And I will just want to give you a quick ramp up in where we came from and where we are ended up right now because of the global pandemic. Yeah, as a kind of little intro on that one, as we all know, until the end of last year, we were living in an attention economy where everything was about more content in a less time, shorter attention spans. We all know it, yeah? So that's where we came from. And then it made the boom, yeah? Global pandemic came and it changed the whole game, yeah? We had to start to deal with a heightened anxiety of people, a limited movement. So at the end, it shifted in two different ways. The attention economy was on the one hand side, turning into a tri-economy, like we call it. And on the other hand side, we entered in the era of conscious consumerism. And the tri-economy, that's what we also always see. It is a kind of, there was a period which was the first time for many consumers to use the internet. There was a kind of digital reset. There was the evolving role of creativity after being this kind of shocked. Then the companies came and creativity came into the game. So tri-economy is the one side. The era of conscious consumerism, this is when we need to deal with questions like the people are asking themselves, do I really need to buy this? Yeah, do I really need to go there? So we need to deal a lot more about empathy, connection, the sense of connection to people's self-care, and of course, the contactless everything. This is how we entered, how it changed on the way. So, but besides of that, we have always seen that our world has always been fluid, yeah? There is nothing static anymore. Everything is going through your fingers, yeah? And what we see over the last years, it needs to the retail needs to follow and adapt to the flow. And that's why we try to give some hints on that kind of directions. Then we said a lot of things get real. So new retail gets real. That's the kind of mission where we are on. When we look in the overall report, it is divided in 4 areas. So the report deals with topics about the human core in the center, which is about connectivity, support, and well-being of people that retail needs to address. Then the second area is the enablers. What can companies and brands and retailers do to address this human core, which is about technology, democratization, collaboration, these kind of aspects. And then we have the relevance drivers covered in the report, which is about newness and discovery, context and proximity, frictionless convenience, and the community reconnect. The local aspects became very much more important than before. And on the other hand side, we have the challenges, which is about green pressure, economics, workforce in retail, and this kind of higher purpose of the retail. I will give you quick examples about today's topic, about frictionless convenience, because we were recognizing that technology, everything what deals with technology in retail is about how can we humanize retail by the help of technology, and how can we take a little bit pressure out and give people that what they want as most, which is time. Take the frictions out, take tasks out so that you make the life easier by the help of technology. And this is the reason why we are here. I have 3 examples in here. I was speaking about the contactless everything. Yeah. One little example in new retail is the contactless everything. Yeah. And when we look at pictures like these in our days, during the pandemic or post-pandemic periods, is this really contactless? Does it represent the digital reset? Most probably no. What we have seen with contactless is that we see a massive rise of buying online and picking up in store, picking it up in locker areas, in front of a building or in shopping malls or whatever, or curbside pickup, drive-throughs. That's why we call it the Bob Anywhere, rise of Bob Anywhere. And we need to see how physical retail can play together with online in that kind of period. Because I always say, if my mother, she's 84 years old, now got used to order something online, pick it up somewhere, just not to go into the store or something like that, then it's everywhere. Yeah. So in that kind of period, it said, yes, we have great technology. We have QR codes. We have NFC-enabled phones where you just can check in and put your phone somewhere or scan the code. Everything is nice. We are there. But there is one problem in COVID-19. There is a showstopper. Any technologies, what we have, QR code, NFC access, for authentication, verification, or even payment checkout experience are not possible anymore in the 1.5 meter society. Yeah? If you make a curbside pickup, we see your arm is not long enough to scan the code or put your NFC phone onto a reader. So new technologies are being challenged by even more new technologies. So there is a secret weapon, what we see in retail, which is not only contactless, but it's also distance. Yeah. So the secret weapon is adding distance to contactless, what we see. And there is players outside there, like a company from the US, which is called Listener, which are enable secure transactions over inaudible tones. So you can make the 6 feet distance and make a contactless payment with new technologies. That's just one example, but we need to deal with it. So even new technologies are being challenged by other ones. Second example is pickup. Again, when we go into parcel pickup, we have seen a kind of quite good examples how pickup can move from this pure, boring and ugly service retail areas into something beautiful. And especially a post office, the Helsinki, the Finnish Post, brought us an example which turned that service retail with a kind of experiential experience in the stores. So Postie Box in Finland, in Helsinki, is one of the examples. You see some pictures here, which turns service retail in a kind of unboxing experience. You can try it, you can pack it, you can do stuff in it. You have pop-up areas where you have another retail in. This is not like we say, how a post office looks like how we used to see post offices. So think beyond, because there is a rise of this kind of pickup, and why not combine service retail with the kind of experiential experiences outside there. Second example in frictionless convenience I want to share with you is Decathlon. Decathlon ditches the legacy POS areas, the big bulks POS systems at the end of the shopping space. It adds a frictionless experience to improve customer experience. There is just some examples. We are used to bringing that big basket to the POS there and check it out. But now Decathlon has recognized that it would be really good if the moment of inspiration gets directly onto the point of sale, so that decentralize the whole POS system, which makes people not think about, should I really buy it or not? At the moment of inspiration, let them buy. So they decentralize the POS system. That was one effect. We know that from the Apple stores. Yeah. But the other aspect, which was very, very clever, is in the post-COVID and the pandemic times, we have the social distancing. So many people might see a kind of line or queuing at the cashier desk and might say, oh, I'm a bit afraid. I will not go into that crowd of people. So even that, you address the well-being of people by decentralizing your POS arena by the help of technology, by mobile technology in retail space areas. We have one other example, which is the Vilyet. Excuse me. Vilyet is an Israeli company, which has brought this year an innovation on the market, because normally what we try in retail spaces, we try to make the environment smart. And Vilyet said, why don't we make the products instead of the environment smart, so that we don't need additional hardware investments out there? So they developed a sticker, just a sticker which can be attached to each and every device, which does not need any kind of battery, because we know in retail environments, when you deal with beacons and all other infrastructure things, there's batteries, there's maintenance or whatever, just in a sticker, which harvests the wasted energy from mobile phones and any other electronic devices, which is enough to fuel a processor on this little sticker. That's really cool. So with this kind of sticker, you can measure the distances, how the products move, you can measure weight, do weight sensing, and send and exchange the data so that your products get smart without any kind of additional infrastructure investment. That was a kind of very good and cool technology example to take out friction, even also for the store staff or for the operations in retail spaces. So at the end, before I want to throw the ball to Bruno. We have said the world has been always fluid. It's time for retail to adapt to the flow. I just want to add one sentence. What we have seen, especially by accelerating digitization in retail and the big rise of e-commerce, we have seen that on outside there in retails, at retailer side and in brands, there are two categories of companies. One of them is the observers, and the other side is the doers. Yeah. And what we have seen is that the observer side, the ones who only have observed, by now have a big problem. Because why? Because scaling digital capabilities will allow retail to capitalize future opportunities and protect their business from risks. So we should definitely think of, or stop asking ourselves, how can online help my physical retail? That is old thinking. We need to think, how can my brick and mortar stores help to create a kind of real omni-channel shopping experience, because it will not fade away. Yeah, and you can do it by technology, and there is a lot more examples in the report. Just download it or ask us to send you a printed version, which is much nicer than a digital version. So from my side, there are much more examples, but I'm just telling it. Yeah, but you need to speak now to the people who really do it each and every day. So I would love to hand over to Bruno. Like we said, we need to see what role, what perspective does technology take in that frictionless world of frictionless convenience. So Bruno, stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So thanks again, Martin. Very interesting. It's always great to see people spending some time and trying to kind of find places and areas of innovation and how some of the companies are basically taking it to the next level. I would like to kind of pick up from that and just, you know, before I dive into any more slides, just tell you the story of why the company Commerce Tools even exists and where it's coming from. The company was founded back in 2006. Initially, it was an agency which was predominantly building e-commerce solutions on top of Hybris before the SAP acquisition. And Dirk Hörig, our CEO, was the founder of that organization, built a lot of successful projects, but over time, especially when the iPhone came out in 2008 and then the iPad a few years later, started to realize that solutions which are basically packaged into a monolithic approach and focused predominantly on a browser or PC/Mac based front end are not maybe fit for the future. And so in 2013, Dirk decided to stop whatever he has been developing and doing in the past and to build an entirely new, completely brand new platform from the ground up in order to serve the purpose of, I would call it the unknown going forward. So instead of having like you know, something in place which limits yourself from changes and going for the unknown and making adjustments on the fly, also based on what Martin told you, he said we need to be in a position to build something which gives us a lot more flexibility, which allows us to actually change on the fly. So we are not stuck in the past, but we are ready to go into the future. So that's how the company was founded. A little bit forward, you know, he built that you know, platform, as I just mentioned, with the goal to you know, basically move away from very complex, I call it spaghetti code based systems where you know, adding an additional desktop or adding an additional front end creates in its own rights a very complex project. And the more of that you do, the more spaghetti code you have, and the less you know, convenience you are in order to change. So the agility has been very limited from that. He focused on that. And so he basically said the only way to approach this is to approach it with an API-based approach where everything is sitting in the cloud. Every commerce activity is actually managed through an API. So as long as the API is in place, changes on top of the API can be made. And with that, you can have completely a big freedom how you actually create the front end experience, how to experiment, you know, just build something and see if it works. If it doesn't work, go back and change it. And with that, also be in a position to do this at speed because you don't have to basically do a 2-year-long planning in order to go live with a new feature, but you just basically do this overnight in some cases. And all of that at scale. So in addition to an API, microservices, and headless based approach, he also decided the only way to actually be successful and scalable is to build it, you know, build and deliver the entire thing in the cloud. So our platform runs on GCP and AWS, and you know, they obviously provide scaling capabilities, and with that we allow our customers to have scalability capabilities for Black Friday or any other event they go through. So maybe just going into a little bit more details here. I touched on a few points already. I think the most important piece to remember is the API first and API only part of that slide. So basically a programming interface which allows you to basically create an abstraction between the complex commerce platform, which has a lot of complexity in terms of basket and orders and PIN, etc., from the front end. And so it allows you to build the logic of your business in the platform without even deciding, what kind of front end capabilities initially are out there. So it is just a very flexible way. We support a number of different programming languages, a system integrator, an agency, or a customer itself can do. And as I mentioned before, all of that is basically cloud native and therefore provided through a very scalable approach to our customers. Just a few customer names. So we have a B2C and a B2B, proposition. On the B2C side, we have roughly 150 customers, adding about 30 every quarter. So we're growing reasonably fast. This is just an extract of companies who have decided to go down that path. One example, which maybe is not entirely tied to retail for this call, but I think it's still a cool use case to show, some of the art of the possible is Audi. The e-tron of Audi is actually, when you buy the car, is always coming at the same way from a hardware point of view and from how it's packaged. But it allows you through an interface within the Audi to subscribe to air conditioning or more speed or other things on the fly. So if you're driving to a different country and you say, I need air conditioning like today, probably Matthew would need in the UK, you can basically through an e-commerce transaction from within the car panel subscribe to an air conditioner, and therefore a couple of weeks or a couple of days. So it's all kind of on demand within reach of the person who is deciding. In order to kind of underline my statements, it actually came in quite handy when we decided to do this webinar today, and when I was invited to participate and speak. It was, what came out from Gartner a few days ago wasn't there, but I'm just happy that it underlines basically what I'm just trying to bring across. Gartner is saying, monolithic applications for commerce are basically dead. The only way to go forward is to actually build API-centric and SaaS-based capabilities in order to allow you to be flexible and agile, and in order to allow you to basically, as I mentioned before, invest into the unknown. So have a platform in place which allows you to go with the changes needed, your consumers are actually undertaking or have a demand for. And just a representation, slightly more technical than just the statements, but I think it makes it pretty clear. So this has been and always will be our approach, but now it's basically underlined by Gartner statement as of this 18th of June report, which came out. It's basically just the system of records underneath, if from our point of view, or from our case, a commerce platform sitting on the cloud in between, which is then basically serving an orchestration layer on the front end, where a company can pick and choose how they want to make an e-commerce experience or a user experience available to their clients, and that's what we have been doing in the past, what we continue to do going forward. And to maybe just use one example, and obviously we'll hear from Matthew in a minute what 66 North is doing, but NBC Universal is a customer for us for quite some time, and they have just gone live with a complete new in-content experience. So if you're reading an article on one of their properties, or if you're watching a video on one of their properties, you can basically make a purchase within the content. So while watching the video or while reading something on their website, if there's something is exposed, you can buy it without going anywhere else in any sorts of experience. And that just kind of converted the the conversion rate, increase the conversion rate by a huge amount. So this is just one of the examples how the underlying complexity of an e-commerce platform was exposed to a new front end, which a few years ago wasn't even possible or even thought of. So that's all I have from my side. I hope that gave some clarity. I think we have some time for questions at the end, but I would like to hand over to Matthew to take it from here. Over to you, Matthew.
Great, thank you, Bruno. So again, my name is Matthew Woolsey. I'm the global president of 66 North, which is a 95-year-old technical outerwear company from Iceland. What we are really about, I think, when we think about these pieces is how do we enable, I think, and sorry, one other piece here is that we are a Commerce Tools customer, and we're probably about a month and a half, depending on how testing goes, out from launch, at least with the website front end. And I think is a useful piece of introduction as well. My previous role, I think this is also sort of a bit of a funny story when you start talking about monolithic applications, Bruno. My previous role, I was global managing director for Net-a-Porter, which is the world's largest luxury e-commerce site. I was there for 3 years. A year before I arrived, they began an implementation with IBM, and I've been gone for a year and a half, and the implementation is still not finished. And I think, any of us who have worked in e-commerce or omni-channel commerce that is related to e-commerce, everyone has a version of that story. And I think, for us, when we sort of wanted to think about what the future of our business could be when it comes to sort of digitalization, both of our stores, and building out capabilities that we already have, such as obviously basic e-commerce, pickup in store, those kinds of things. But really thinking about a user experience and a customer experience where we could have, sort of distribute the experience across, more touch points than we previously considered, and certainly touch points into the future. So for us, a reasonable part of our business comes from experiential, where people are outdoors, they're in the Icelandic highlands with guides. How do we enable commerce at those touch points? How do we enable commerce when people are on airplanes, touring the country or going or coming in to visit? And then I think as well, from the content standpoint, how do we create those experiences where every aspect of our content is completely shoppable in a very sort of, I guess you would say, easy to use kind of way. And I think as well, when you think about, COVID, one of the things that I think has been really helpful in thinking about what a sort of API-driven microservices focused solution can be is really, I think, the speed of development and the speed of building things, whether that's just on a minimum viable product or a prototype, because you aren't running into problems of sort of long-term debt, really, and technical debt and deficiency. And so, one of our sort of biggest experiences with that, besides, giving ourselves more freedom on the front end because we're living in a headless world, is also, I think, this aspect where we can get something up and running much more quickly. And I think for a small and medium-sized business, much more quickly also means much less expensively, because ultimately, your core cost is really either third-party hours or opportunity cost of people's hours. And I think when I contrast that to the sort of business operations methodologies that you would use in a large enterprise, which is using sort of traditional monolithic applications, putting to one side, obviously, the components of, no pun intended with components, with the aspects of how you do planning and how you do corporate planning and business planning, and I think when you are working in a large monolithic application, you find yourself often in a situation where you have months of review of business cases because the time, money, and people's effort is so demanding that you can't really afford to get it wrong. So you spend months analyzing things, making assumptions, and really sort of road mapping people's quarters, half years, and years. And then when and then things like COVID happen or customer preferences happen, and you find yourself in an unagile state of mind. So I think, for us, what we've been really sort of to really about what we're focused on in terms of how we build out our technical capabilities is really taking advantage of this question where, you know, now obviously with COVID, but certainly at any time, I think in the history of business, you know, you don't actually know what things will work and what things won't work. And people, you know, customers have a way of deciding that as opposed to what projections and you know, best intentions and creative ideas do. And so effectively for us, what we've been able to do then is, you know, build, prototype, and test more things at a lower risk and to deliver them more quickly. So as a result, yes, it makes us more agile, but it also puts us in a position where, you know, from a business implementation standpoint, whether that's things like, you know, I mean, whether it's reimagining what the POS experience can be like, or it's, you know, thinking about new consumer touch points. It doesn't try something out, you know, has a when you're able to give yourself a lower, you know, a lower burden, so to speak, of what the opportunity impact is financially and time-wise on the business, it gives you the opportunity to try more and to sort of, I think, accept that idea that you don't know exactly what will work or what will take off or what will resonate. And also to, I think, compress the time cycles of development and deployment in terms of putting things in customers' hands to find out. And I think that to me, especially when it comes to e-commerce, has always been one of the missing, you know, one of the missing links, because I think when we think about developers, designers, business people, especially in an e-commerce or omnichannel setting, you know, I mean, I think we've all been in the situations where, you know, you take part in a hackathon and what a team can put together in 4 hours is really great. And then you sort of say, okay, well, how long would that take to actually, you know, roll out at an enterprise level? And you find yourself with these like dramatically different timelines and cost structures where, you know, you sort of start to say to yourself, okay, you know, that's great. You know, the basic proof of concept, you know, you can do in 4 hours, but to actually make it functional, you know, we're going to need, you know, 2 quarters or longer. And, you know, I think to the point, Bruno, I think you made on spaghetti code, you know, and then you also then enter into this place where to even then do it means you're going to give yourself future complexity and when you try to go and do the next thing. So I think, you know, when you know, I feel very strongly that the sort of the pure API microservices model, you know, not only, I mean, I think it's important, as you guys say, from a future-proofing the business standpoint, but I even think that if everything remains exactly the same, it's a better model because it doesn't require a business to place the same level of risk on projects to, you know, it gives them to experiment. And I think people are often much more creative and you know, less afraid to try and to take chances when you're able to lower that risk threshold. So, you know, I think for me, that's how I, you know, that's how I was introduced, I think, to commerce tools at first, but, you know, it's really been sort of a longstanding, I think, gap in the market because even, you know, even when you look at, I think many of the SaaS tools that are out there, oftentimes they're really just old applications that have been modified ever so slightly to now run in the cloud. You know, and I think what I think where we are right now is that we've been talking about omnichannel for such a long time, but, you know, it's now finally at that point, it's starting to get to that point where, you know, there's not really channel specific, there's never really been channel specific customers, but, you know, I think Martin, as you said, you know, we're now at the point where even, you know, Martin's 85-year-old mother is using everyday standard shopping practices, which would have been like technically impossible to imagine being done easily, you know, even just like 10 years ago. And so I think customers aren't making those sort of channel distinctions. And so I think being able to be flexible to the ways in which they experience your brand as opposed to experiencing new technology is something that I think is monumentally important. So I'll close it at that. So I don't monopolize the conversation too much, but if anyone has any questions afterward, we can I'll elaborate further.
All right. So I just got my Mac. The meeting is too hot. Yeah. So I thought in the UK it's too hot, but it's hot. So if I'm gone, my Mac has shut Okay, thank you, Matthew. And to give the two perspectives from the platform side and from the business side, and also what happened in your past, what we have all faced. I think from the audience, many of the people have faced exactly the same thing. Yeah, maybe also waiting still for a finished regulatory implementation on another thing. So there is now, I think we have another 15 minutes or so, if there are any kind of questions that are coming in. So if someone drops us the questions in, because one thing for what I have seen, Bruno, when you were speaking about the Gartner, yeah, about the model, about the commerce platform and the touch points. So one thing I want to give to you, just call the Gartner guys and add the car with its head unit as a touch point, because they forgot it. Yeah, and this is a rising touch point because you did it. You spoke about Audi, yeah, and Gartner does not feature it because somehow it is too far away, maybe from the guys who make the charts. Yeah, just give them the hint and send them an G icon with a car, and then we have a approved slide. That's what I have seen here. And Matthew, there was a thing when you were speaking about your testing new customer touch points. Tell us a little bit. So I would be interested in what will be the maybe we can call it the weirdest customer touch point you have in mind, which you want to make shoppable. Yeah, what is the kind of, what's the future? What's next? What is hot? What did you never tried before with regards to?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the weirdest. I mean, you know, I'm from California and I work mostly in Iceland, so I've got two very like weird, you know, groups of people and culture that we're all putting together. So like we enjoy that kind of a challenge. You know, I think the thing for me is that, you know, as I think you were saying with Audi, you know, it's like, why shouldn't a car be a customer touch point? You know, why shouldn't we be able to, you know, make a shoppable touch point in, you know, sort of one of the sort of heavily modified super Jeeps that people are taking around, you know, the highlands and the mountains, you know, and ways in which you can enable, you know, delivery and pickup from, you know, airplane seat terminals as well. And I think, you know, it's the I think so much of what's missing is that, you know, traditionally we think about creating those things as you know, platform specific heads, you know, that then sort of become apps in their own right, some odd, you know, proprietary system, or it becomes something deeply unsatisfying like a product feed. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you know, it can be interesting, you know, and I think, you know, as if you can expose, you know, if you can expose everything that you have through an API. I mean, another thing that, you know, we're actually really quite excited about is, you know, we are a carbon neutral company. You know, we take our consumption and our supply chain extremely seriously. I think we're also interested to think about how we can make, you know, how we can make components of our supply chain and, you know, sort of ERP in general, sort of serviceable, you know, interactive in a way, like engaged with our customer experience, and really just sort of broaden our definition of like what the customer universe. And so I think, you know, we're playing around with all of that and trying to come up with some weird and fun ideas. But I think, you know, the most sort of dramatic ones are obviously the ones that take place in like far-flung, you know, on glaciers, and why not? Like, well, how can we make that work, or, you know, in a helicopter or something. But you know, it's just fun to imagine it, and it's also you kind of get to when you get the weight off your shoulders of you know, the sort of self-defeating cycle of, yeah, I mean, that'll cost this amount to develop. It'll take us a year. You know, it sort of frees you up for a lot more creativity.
Right. So I just can say to all of the audience, to all of us, just follow 66 North because maybe the glacier, as long as we have it, hopefully very long, will be shoppable. So Bruno, is there any kind of thing that Gartner also has forgot as a kind of touch point that can be made shoppable? What's in your mind?
Yeah, I think the one is, which at least from my point of view is probably the least exposed today, at least in my world. I'm not the biggest friend with Siri, but I do think voice commerce clearly has a huge amount of potential, where the ability for me to actually use an interface, a voice interface, and order through that, or just use it or leverage it in whatever shape or form you are, has a huge amount of potential, which can also be connected with other things, right? So going back to the car example, why, I mean, while you're driving, why do you need to actually use a touch panel to order an air conditioner when you could talk about it, or you ask a voice system to ask that? So I think it is a lot further advanced in the States, but over here I don't believe at least the brands I'm interacting with, or I know that they have leverage that at all, and I do believe there's an opportunity to kind of make it work better. And then, of course, I mean, I'm Swiss. My native mother tongue is Swiss German, and that's kind of another challenge on its own, that some of those systems don't really particularly understand or good with accents. But other than that, I think that's a lot of room for improvement for sure.
All right, good. So there will be, we're having in our agenda the final points. So to make the last round in this meeting today, at the beginning I was telling we want to give you a focus on the future of retail, but also a kind of glimpse on how to deal with today. So each of you, maybe you can give your the final points on what should the audience, from your perspective, or what you take by yourself to look into the future of new retail, and what is important to deal with today. Maybe a kind of very quick final points to the audience as a kind of takeaways from two guys who are doing it every day. Who wants to start? Matthew, what are your final points for the future and how to deal with today?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in terms of some of the things that we've talked about today in terms of technology, I mean, I think it's really, for me, about how do you invert the relationship between, your technology, and whether that's your application or your sort of full stack, dictating your business, your business decisions, versus, the opposite way around. And I think the way, I think we are in this place where these sort of huge names and huge technologies. And it's been this way for a while. I think it's becoming this way ever more. But how do we sort of, as a business, like allow ourselves to make creative business decisions that assume technology, as opposed to needing to make technology decisions which incorporate business? And I think that piece of it, especially as I think businesses want to grow and be relevant in new markets, and there's not, it's not 2010 where just opening something up or building a mobile app is going to sort of rock the world in some way. I think it's just really thinking about how you can create that fluid experience. So that would be for me. In terms of for the moment right now, I think we really, you raised that question on conscious consumerism. It'll be interesting to see to what extent that remains a trend. I certainly hope that it will. I think, we all need to be asking ourselves as businesses. I mean, one of the things that I spent a lot of time trying to think about is this question, why does our business want to grow? Why is it a good thing if our business grows in like a broad economic, social, health standpoint? And I think that increasingly, I think most companies probably couldn't answer that in a way that doesn't just say, return value to shareholders, which is fine, I guess. But I think that increasingly, both from the standpoint of customers, but also workers, companies, a situation like COVID, like the recessions that are going to be occurring in every major world economy. Increasingly, people are going to be asking themselves more seriously, why do I want to pick this company? Why do I want to be with this company? And I think it all descends from that sole question from a brand of, why do I need to grow? Why do I need to exist? And I think, we all have a lot to do in answering that.
Thank you, Matthew. Bruno?
Yeah, I would touch on the I think a phrase which is quite well known these days out in the marketplace, that every company becomes a software company. I think that's an overused phrase, but I think it is very true and very accurate. I think especially the modern thinking companies who have decided to actually go down the path of using modern stack architectures are just going to have a huge advantage over time against the older way of doing things. And I would just challenge everybody to make sure that you're not falling into the trap of situation where somebody is trying to convince you that they have a real modern stack technology as well. There's a lot of, and I think Matthew mentioned it before, there is a lot of people who claim they're in the cloud and they claim they're headless and microservices based, but they're not. And so the worst thing, which I think from my point of view, that's not an advertisement from the vendor, but it's the worst thing which can happen is if you just kind of like migrate yourself from a problematic monolithic old school system into the next one, and that's just I think is the most important piece. Be careful, in the modern world, everything is documented, open, clear. There's nothing hidden, and if you find nothing hidden, then you're in the right place. And so looking forward to a further chat with some of you on that basis.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much all. Let me summarize it. What we said in the beginning. I was giving a quick intro in this massive information, what we have aggregated, and trying to elaborate on the major insights on it. Go to the download page, download the report, or request a hard copy for that, which is beautiful to hold in the hand, which is better to read. Go in there, and based on the talk like we have done today, we will bring a kind of couple of more talks on different topics on new retail. Just follow. We will announce it always. We will do it virtually at one place, or we will go to a place to show you things, but it will always kind of focus on the aspect that new retail gets real. That means we will always invite people who are doing it, who are waking up in the morning and think nothing else than what can we do better. And that would be also my final message to you. Everything what we say is always what we talk today, what we see in new retail is the thing what we need to keep in our mind is that we never should stop thinking about what will we do differently tomorrow. Every time think about that, and we can help you in that as well. That's what we do, and that's what I love to do, bringing things together that have never met before, see what happens in the middle, looking at it from different perspectives, and then start the creativity. You remember in the beginning that the try economy and the conscious consumerism gives huge amount of opportunities. Yes, we will have some bumpy times, but this always creates some opportunities. Thank you very much for attending all. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Matthew. It was a great pleasure, and we will continue our talks and never stop. Thank you very much.